David has worked out a bit.
Good, now I'm set.
Okay. All right, Winnie, we are ready, I think. David, are you ready?
Yes, I am. We are ready.
Okay. So we go?
Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon all, and welcome again to this week's Masterclass webinar. This meeting is in partnership with ITC, which is the International Trade Center, SheTrades Commonwealth Project, and SOCAA, the Society of Crop Agribusiness Advisors of Kenya. This afternoon, we will be looking at issues to do with maximizing productivity, and especially in a crop that we all cherish, and that is in the French beans sector. There are questions that are being asked, of course, whether we are at our peak in terms of productivity and whether we are already doing enough as far as standards related to the same is concerned. And to take us through this week's program, we have just one panelist, and we have done this purposely because we need a lot more time to discuss the issues related to the growing or productivity of French beans in this country. I will take this time again, as usual, to allow our panelists to introduce themselves. And David, you are not new to the program, but we will still need you to introduce yourself. Kindly proceed for now.
Thank you, Joshua. My name is David Daguar. I am a grower, and today I'm very happy because I've been growing. Fine beans is one crop that I've grown for a very long time, and I've been in this field of growing for the last 25 years. So I'm not a guru, but I'll try as much as possible to expound on what I know about fine beans, and as the topic of today suggests, we'll be looking at ways of how to increase the production of runner beans so that they can put more money in farmers' pocket. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. And like I said, we are today concentrating on the growing of French beans, how to maximize the productivity. And therefore, we only have one panelist. But before we allow David to continue with what he has to present to us, I would like to inform our audience that there's a link that has been shared. And this link is one where we are conducting some kind of a survey. And we request anyone who is joining to find time, even during the presentation, to just go onto that link and fill in the information. It's not going to take a lot of your time. It's a very basic questionnaire, and this is very vital for us to assess how we are doing. David, there are some few questions, of course, that people may ask, or those who are interested in this segment. And one of it is that, are we growing enough? Are we already satisfying the market that we are serving? And are we conforming to those standards? I don't know whether you will dive on the standards at some stage, but if not, we have also others in the background who will help us there. But I know you are able to cut across those issues. Are we doing enough? Are we growing enough? Are we at our maximum peak, or can we improve on what we are doing currently?
Thank you, Joshua. You have asked a series of questions that cannot be answered with one word. I have to make several sentences for me to be able to answer. I may say that we are not growing enough, and in some months we do grow enough. One problem with French bean, I would say, is the market fluctuations. Sometimes during the month of June, July, August, September, we usually suffer from off-season, and that is when the country or the temperate countries are able to grow their own production. And then that is when we experience depressed demand for fine beans. Not that the consumers are not eating enough, it's only that others are able to grow. Those are windows where they can be able to produce and produce enough. So at those particular times, we actually reduce our production. And I would say those are the months that we usually grow enough. In other months, we are not able to meet the demand caused by some constraints, especially in month of June, January, February, March, when there is extreme heat resulting to shortage of water. The production of fine beans is actually depressed. And that is when the demand is usually very high, and sometimes it attracts quite high prices. Yeah. So if I may continue.
Yes, you've answered that quite well. So please just proceed with what you had. I hope I didn't interrupt your your message.
You didn't.
So, yeah.
Now I can carry on and talk everything about French beans. As you said, I can be able to cut across the growing and the standards, but I have my very competent colleague called Jen, and I'm sure she'll be able to fill up the gaps that I may leave behind. So today I have, I'm going to talk about, I'd like to introduce the topic for today. And French beans is one of the most, among the most popular vegetable crops that are mainly grown for export. It is the leading export commodity when it talks to horticultural vegetables. It takes the biggest chunk, almost up to 60%. We also have its sisters like snow peas and sugar snaps, who also take quite a huge chunk, but not as much as French beans. And it's a common vegetable. Most of the people around Kenya or in horticultural growing areas are well conversant with the vegetable. It's a legume, belongs to leguminous family, and it performs very well. One good thing with it is that it cuts across all weather, and it can be grown in a wide range of climatic conditions within the country, apart from the coastal region or area that are below 700 meters above sea level. Especially when the temperatures goes very high, the crop is not able to perform well. Sometimes in some extreme temperatures, it may fail to flower. When it comes to consumption, French beans are mainly consumed by, are mainly grown for export market, but it's gaining local acceptance. These days, it is very easy to sell French beans in Marikiti, and also it's also easy to sell French beans in some of our popular supermarkets. I may not name them, but whenever I visit these supermarkets, I usually see French beans, but a huge chunk is normally grown for export market. In the subject of today, to go into the subject of today, where we are going to talk about increasing the production. Why are we talking about increasing the production? We need to increase the production per unit area. And I think this is where the catch is. The keyword is increasing the production per unit area. We may increase the volume, but the people who are growing are not benefiting. The farmer gets to benefit when he or she increases the production per unit area. If you want to work out the production per kilo, it is usually the cost divided by the production. The bigger the production, the smaller the cost of production, or the less the cost of production. So for you to be able to earn money in any kind of farming, you need to focus on increasing your cost per area or per area. Now, how do we increase this production per unit area? I've explained the reason as to why we want to increase, and the reason how. Now I want to dwell on how. Now, the first time I stepped in a real agricultural class, I was given the definition of agriculture as an art and a science of growing crops. So this is one subject. At that particular time, apart from getting that definition for the sake of passing an exam, I did not think much about it. But after many years after that class, I got to understand how agriculture is a science and an art at the same time. The art part of it, I experienced the art part of it in 1996 when I was employed in Homegrown. And I met one agronomist called Ian Critchley, who introduced me to the practicality of the art part of agriculture. And what Ian did, or what he was doing, the job that he allocated me, was to ensure that I count the number of beds that were supposed to be made from a hectare. He ensured that I got the real exact length of the bed, and he gave me the spacings. He did not stop at that. He ensured that I counted the number of holes before any bean could be planted in a bed. So like the spacing, in this case, we were doing runner beans. The spacing was 40 centimeters, and the length of the bed was 100 meters. So if you divide 100 by 40, you get 250. So one line had 250 holes, and there were 2 lines in a bed. So the number of holes that were supposed to be were 500. I had to count, go to an extent of counting, not assuming 500 holes in a bed, and each hole, two seeds were planted in a hole in each hole, which made that made the number of total seeds planted in a bed to be 1,000. Then he was tasking me in terms of weighing the seeds and counting the number of seeds that made a kilo, and then I would work out the total seed count in a hectare divided by the number of seeds per kilo in order to get the total kgs that would be planted in that particular block. And he would only allow plus and minus 1. So I had to work on paper before requesting for the seeds. And in any single time that if I brought 2 kilos, then he would tell me that we didn't do a good job because he reasoned that we might have messed up with the plant population. It's been counted in his case. And that is the concept that I got. And that is when I understood the art part of agriculture, which involved measuring the block, ensuring that the block is the meters that you want. If it's a hectare and the bed length is 100, then you have the other length as 100. So it had to be 10,000 meters squared. There was no assumption. So the total population per hectare was 60,000, and that was not debatable. We had to make sure that we got that. So at that particular time, the kind of yields that you are getting were very high, and you used to get up to 40 tons plus on runner beans. Now, how does the science part of agriculture comes in? That getting to know the plant population, dividing to get to know the number of beds that you're going to have, measuring the spacing to the precision and making sure that you get the 60%, the 60,000, that is the art. The science is when you want to plant, you have to do the soil analysis. When you do the soil analysis, for you to work out the nutrient requirements by a crop, then you have to use some scientific principle. A principle is something that is casted in rock and stone. You cannot change it. So the art is not based on principles. The art is based on what you decide as the facts that you can be able to use. But principles are principles and cannot be changed. So like if you find that you need to use DAP, you would be using DAP for a particular reason, because you want to give the content as dictated by the DAP for you to meet the requirement. If you want to use a chemical, for example, like I'm going to mention dodothrine, which is lambda-cyhalothrin. If you want to use lambda-cyhalothrin, there is the chemistry part that affects the insect that you are targeting or the pest that you are targeting. That is the science part of agriculture. If you, as a farmer, get to know that dodothrine kills thrips, you will be knowing that knowledge is in art form. Then an agronomist would know it in a scientific form, because he'll end up getting to know the active ingredient of that particular pesticide. So now I'm going to go into the actual growing of fine beans. And today I'm going to deal with almost everything. I'm going to deal with growing of runner beans in a holistic manner, whereby I'm going to talk about land preparation and the cost. I'm also going to talk about labor, the cost, the seeds, and also I'm also going to talk about pesticides, fertilizer application, harvesting, and up to the time that the beans leaves the farmer to go to the exporter for processing in the pack house, to how it is exported up to the final consumer. Welcome. I have prepared my presentation, and I'm going to start. I have a presentation, the sheet on labor. For you to be able to have meaningful production, you have to deal with the art part of agriculture. And this is, you do a block design. Of course, there are those basics about you need to be in a site that has water availability. The soil should be good enough for farming. In terms of that one, just requires an observation. The soil that could be rocky would not be suitable for farming. Apart from soil analysis, you have to do an observation and then make a decision whether that kind of soil would be ideal for your growing. Some soils may not even require going into analysis. If you go into a place whereby it's almost 100% sandy, or 100% or 80% rocky, then you know that you don't need to do any soil analysis for you to know that the land or the soils are not suitable. So by looking at the soil and by judgment, you judge that the soil is good, it will be friable and will be prepared easily. Then you go into the next step of soil analysis. Soil analysis, you'll be doing it in order to get to know the fertility or the nutrients that are in the soil. That is, you may also test for the organic matter to see whether the soil has organic matter. And why should it have organic matter? The organic matter acts as a buffer in the soil. It helps in increasing the water holding capacity of the soil, and also increases water holding capacity and retention. And so what happens is that instead of water leaching out, it is held by the organic matter within the soil particles, and it stays there for long when it's available for the crop. Let's talk about, once you have done your soil analysis and you have identified that you have available water, it could be from the river, dam, or any other source, borehole, you do the soil analysis, and also you carry out a water analysis. The objective of doing the water analysis is to get to know whether the water has contaminants in terms of heavy metals or heavy metals or high concentration of coliforms, or those biological microbes that are not desirable and would compromise food safety. So once you do that and you find that the water is within the range acceptable for irrigation, then you go ahead and you tick that as your number one. Then you do your soil analysis. The main objective for that is to get to know what the soil has, and that will guide you in terms of working out your fertilizer program that would be adequate to meet your production requirement or your production target. We are going to deal with block design. Once you have identified the land, you need to demarcate your land. And the demarcation we are going to deal today, we are going to restrict our discussion to 1 acre. I've adopted some length here. This doesn't mean that your block has to be, my length here of my block is 80 meters long. Width is 50 meters, Within this, I decide the number of the bed size at the top. For this, in this case, it's 1 meter, and the pathways are 0.5. So that will give me, if you divide 1.5 by 80, which is the width, the length, you'll get the number of beds as 53. And then if you come now to the records, I've written here the planting date. The planting date when you want to plant or when you plant. In your records, you have to have a planting date and a harvesting date and the variety that you are planting. And then you have to name the block. This work of designing will help you in managing your crop rotation, because this block that you have named as A1, it means that next time you come to plant in the same field, you'll know that A1 had beans, and you need to rotate. You need to carry out crop rotation in order to avoid soil-borne diseases and other related problems. So the other thing is also block identity also helps in traceability. And traceability is a key factor when it comes to standards. If you grow fine beans in block A1, even when you are selling it to your customer, you have to name that block as A1 with the planting date, variety, and also any activity that was done within that block. Then we go to step number 1. After we have demarcated our blocks, we have seen the number of beds that we're going to attain. We now go to the next step of land preparation. And we start with ploughing. We do a medium ploughing. Fine beans do not really require that deep ploughing. Do a medium ploughing. And then after that, you do the harrowing. Under normal circumstances, you'll find that I've taken the price and I've inquired around wide and I've asked quite a number of people how much it costs them to plow 1 acre, and I've been given a price of 3,000 shillings. Harrowing is usually charged at half price of harrowing, and it's charged at 1,500. After that, we talked about, we got to step number 2 of bed making. This involves raising the beds to approximately 6 inches and level the top. The fine bean is, the size of the seed is not very big and it requires a fine till. whereby if you get bigger clods, you have to break them to smaller tilth. And this is important because the seed is small. If you bury it, if you plant it deeper than 1 inch, then it may not germinate. And you get 53 beds. If you're using people to make the beds, one person can make 3 beds, in a day, and we call it a target. So if we are allocating a target, you need one person will do 3 beds, and you will need 17 people or 17.6 people in order to complete the 53 beds at a cost. I've taken an average of 300. If the labor charges are lower or higher in your area, you can adjust that to 250 or 350. In my case, it's giving me 5,300 shillings. Then you come to furrow making. On top of that bed, once you make the bed, on top of the bed, you'll plant fine beans. The bed is 1 meter. You'll divide the center of the bed, whereby from one end to the edge will be 50 centimeters. Then from the center, you'll move 30 centimeters left and 30 centimeters to the right from the center. That means the distance between the 2 furrows that you're going to make will be 60 centimeters. You make furrows that are 2 inches deep. You can even make them to 4 inches deep because of manure application. Once you make them 4 inches deep, it's opening up a furrow, a V-shaped furrow, which is 4 inches deep. Then step 4 is manure application. Apply adequate manure inside the furrow, about 2 inches. So we have 53 beds, and the target, one person can be able to apply manure in 20 beds. So you need 2.6 Mondays. At 300 shillings, it will cost you 795 shillings. You go to the next operation, which is fertilizer application. Depending on the soil analysis, get an agronomist to advise on quantity and type required. Whatever the type, you still be applying on 53 beds. The target is 53. One person can do one acre, and then it will cost you 300 shillings to do that. Mixing. Why do we mix? We mix in order to make sure that the soil and manure and fertilizer are mixed to homogeneity. And the reason as to why we have to do this is because most of the fertilizers are hygroscopic in nature, meaning that they absorb water from the atmosphere or from the surrounding. And then what happens is that if the seed, when you plant the seed, it is dried to the moisture content of about 13%. It should not be higher than 13% moisture content. At that point, the seed cannot germinate, and that is why it is kept in dry, cool place. The moment you take it into the field and you plant it, once you subjected it, once you irrigate, the seeds imbibes the water, and that is when the germination mechanism is triggered. If for any chance you irrigate and then you stop, or you take longer to do the second irrigation, if the seed will be next to the fertilizer and the surrounding of the seed happens to dry up, the fertilizer may suck the water from the seed, and it will be like reversing the germination process, which leads to rotting. So it's very, very important to ensure that the fertilizer is properly mixed to what I'm calling homogeneity. It must have something that is uniform and good. So that is mixing. And we've seen that's going to cost us 795 shillings to mix because we'll need 2.6 people. Then drip line. I've put here drip line. There are several methods of water application. Depending on the system that you're using, there is drip line irrigation. You could be using overhead irrigation whereby you install sprinklers, or flood irrigation is whereby you prepare some basins and then you let water floods, and then you close the basins once it fills up. And that one takes sometimes like a week or two before you come back with another irrigation. There is the improved modern technology of drip irrigation, which is gaining ground with our local farmers. Many farmers are using it. The good thing with drip irrigation is able to use less water, because you only apply water where it is needed. Unlike in overhead irrigation, whereby you apply water in 100% of your area. Like if you have 1 acre, you'd be applying water in 4,000 meters squared. Well, in this, you'll be applying like a third of that. So you end up using the water in a more efficient manner. So install drip lines to run along the furrow and irrigate soon after planting. That aspect of drip irrigation, because it's not a lot of job, it's not a big task. You'll spend 300 shillings. The other item is seed placing. Seed placing is the actual planting. Place seeds at 10 centimeters apart along the furrow. There are different ways of planting fine beans. I told you to do 2 furrows along two parallel furrows at the top of the bed at 60 centimeters apart. You can do 2 rows, or you can do 4 rows. When you do 4 rows, you increase your seed spacing to between 12 centimeters to 15 centimeters. So you'll have a higher seed population, but you can even do 2 rows. If you do 2 rows, you can use 10 centimeters from seed to seed, 2 lines in a bed. So that's, if you're using 2 lines per bed, 10 centimeters, you'll require 10.6 Mondays, and it will cost you 3,180. Covering. Cover with shallow soil, leaving a shallow furrow of 1 inch depth. So after you've placed your seeds, you cover with very light soil to a maximum depth of 1 inch, and then irrigate immediately. So covering you'll need 2 Mondays to do that, and it will cost you about 611 shillings. After you have done the planting and covering, you irrigate, and other major activities will be weeding, because you'll have to ensure that the crop is kept weed-free by removing the weeds. There are no technicalities here. It's the same thing that farmers normally use. Weeding will cost you, you'll need, 1 person can do 4 beds. That means the total Mondays required will be 13.25 at a rate of 300. That will be 3,975 to weed 1 acre. Mostly you will see yourself weeding 3 times, spending the same amount. And by the time you are doing this, the third weeding, you'll be almost to the picking. When it comes to picking normally, depending on where you are, picking commences between 7 to 10 weeks from planting, depending on the altitude. If you're in low altitude, you'll find that you are picking like in 7 weeks. In high altitude areas, like areas of Nyeri, Narumoro area, Meru, it will take you 10 weeks from planting to the commencement of picking. Areas of Mwea, beans will go for 7 weeks before you start harvesting. So harvesting, you'll mostly takes 3 weeks, and the first week of picking, when you're doing an acre, you will get, you can see my network is a bit low. In the first week of picking, you'll pick between 1,000 to 1,200 kilos. In the second week, you'll pick between 1,500 to 2,000 kilos. In the third week, you'll pick between 500 and 800 kilos, and then the crop will dry and you'll remove it. So when you're picking what I would call an ideal pick, 1 acre is supposed to give you 4 tons of fine beans when you have done all the practices right. And this is not the maximum. I've come across farmers who have done up to 6 tons, and the others who usually produce lowly up to 1 ton. So if you do it well, you get an average of 4 tons, and we'll see the impact of 4 tons when we'll be looking at the costs. The total cost, labor cost for 1 acre comes to 64,000 shillings. The cost of land preparation is 4,500. So we've done the labor, and I think I've exhausted everything. We go to sheet 2, which has the sprays and fertilizer application and costings. What are the main challenges that when it comes to pests? Pest number 1, which is very stubborn, are thrips. And thrips are bad because they affect the crop from the leaves, the flowers, and the pods. And once the pods are affected, that leads to rejection in the pack house and a big loss to the farmer. So there are those chemicals. There are many chemicals out there in the market that are used in terms of controlling thrips. I'll just mention a few: Dudothrine, Twiggies, Proof, Brigade, Radiant, Tracer, etc. Before you do any application of these chemicals, you have to read the label and see that there's something called label approval for a specific crop. You'll see that
David, we are having issues with your network. David, we lost you somehow.
For beans, you get. Hello, Joshua, can you hear me?
Yeah, now you are back. We lost you for a few minutes.
Okay. Did you get up to where it started talking about thrips?
Yes.
So we are talking about main challenges of, sorry for that inconvenience. We were talking about main challenges that affect the fine beans. And we dwelt with the thrips, and I mentioned the chemicals that that controls the thrips effectively. Dudothrine, Twiggies, Proof, Brigade, Radiant, Tracer. And I also mentioned that before a farmer may decide to use a product, the best thing, or the best place to look for information is within the product label. You find that there is a box. If you look at the label, you'll find a box that is called a statutory box. It has the information required to enable you use the chemical appropriately. It has the dosage rate or the amount of chemical that you have to put in a knapsack or in a given area. It will also give you the rate, the number of days that you have to wait before you can be able to pick the crop. So other pests are black bean aphids. They're also very injurious. White flies are very damaging, and also dangerous because they are very resistant they offer strong resistance to available pesticides. Then you have caterpillars. They're not very hard to control. You have Racer, Rana, Dodo3, etc. For whiteflies, you have F-Proof, Dynamic, and Oberon. Then you have mites, which you can control using Dynamic. Diseases, main diseases are hollow blight, rust, anthracnose, fusarium. The cure for fusarium is not known. Where you find fusarium, the remedy is to do crop rotation. If you have anthracnose, you can use lunar sensation, anthracnose or Defane, but you have to ensure that you check on the label to see that the chemical is approved for those uses. Then rust, you use copper-based fungicide, Defane, anthracnose, Score, Otiva, etc. And then hollow blight, you use copper-based fungicides. On fertilizers, fertilizer mainly depends with the soil analysis. But I've done a sample fertilizer program and costings. I have NP, P205 and K20, the price and amount. Got here as the kgs to be applied, the 100 kgs of DAP at planting. This is an example. This may change depending on the soil analysis. 75 kgs of CAN at top dressing, and 160 kilogram. That will give you 27 kgs of N, 27.2 kgs of P205, and potassium oxide of 27. So the total, I have the targets here that I'm trying to achieve in order to get the ideal fertilizer. Once I apply this, I see that the fertilizer is going to cost me 18,760. Now, above here, these are sample of a spray record. You have to ensure the standards dictates that every activity that is done in the farm must have a record. And spray is one area that records are necessary. And a spray record would look like this. It will have, this is called block spray records. You have a block with that gap there should have the block like A1. The area of that block must be identified, the planting week, crop, and variety of the beans that you're planting. Then here you have the date, you have the chemical, you have the active ingredient. Active ingredient is that part of the chemical that kills the disease or the pathogen that you're targeting. So there's the target. In this case, the chemical could be dodothrine, the active ingredient could be lambda-cyhalothrin, the target could be thrips. The rates would be here, and this is the rate that is on the label. Unit of measurement, either in liters or grams. The volume is the volume of water. The PHI is the number of days that you have to wait before you start picking. And then CTPD is a crop. This is when this is a PHI, and then crop total production. If you have to, this is clear to pick. This is clear to pick date, which you indicate there. After you have sprayed, you have to say when will it clear, and then you sign. I've done with this sheet. The cost of fertilizer, the spray costs, have taken a figure of 26,000 shillings as your total costs when in our worst case scenario. We go to sheet number 3 and see the time is running. Here is the gross margin analysis, and this is the main bit that will tell you whether the business is worth doing or not. Expected production 3 tons in that column, and then 4 tons. I mean 3 tons or 3,000 kilos and 4,000 kilos. You could be given a price, the kawaida price that is given is 60 bob per kilo in both cases. In case number 1, case A, you get 180,000 as your income. If you produce 4 tons, you get 240,000 per acre as your gross income. You can call this as our gross income. So the gross income, then you have the costs, you have the leasing cost, the plowing, labor, chemical, fertilizer, irrigation. And there's one very, very important cost that I left out, and this is the cost of seed. Cost of seeds. The cost of seed in an acre normally, you plant 1 bag, which will cost you an average of 18,500. Not actually 1 bag, you'll plant 0.75 of a bag. So it is, a bag is 20,000, approximately 20,000 times 0.75. So you'll end up paying 15,000 for the bag for the seeds. Plowing, we took from the figure from the previous workings, 4,500 in both cases. Labor, you can see that our figure here is differing. In the first column, we have 54,000. In the second, we have 64. The difference is because in this column, we are getting higher production, and it's costing us more to pick. Chemicals, we are using the same 26,000. Fertilizer cost is 18,000 in both cases. Irrigation cost is 20,000. Mainly for irrigation, you have costed in terms of cubic meters that are required. In an ideal condition, or to estimate, you use 40 cubic meters per hectare per day, or 16 cubic meters per acre per day. You irrigate for 7 days, and times the number of weeks the crop will be on the ground, times the cost of the cost per cubic meters when you're using electricity, or you could be pumping. So for those who are pumping, your cost of fuel or cost of irrigation should come to 20,000 shillings. So the total cost, the total growing cost of 1 acre, in this case is 145, and in the case number 2 is 155. But the only difference here is the picking, because in one scenario we are having 4 tons, and the other scenario we have 3 tons. The break-even point. The break-even point is that point, the number of kilos that you need to produce in order for you to make or to cover all your costs. In case number 1, we see that we need to produce 4.4 or 2,418 kilos in order to cover all our costs. If we get that, then we will not have made any money, but we'll have managed to cover our costs. In case number 2, we need to produce 2,585 kilos in order to cover our costs. Indirect cost involves, if you look at this, I did not include the labor for the guys who will be irrigating, the guy who will be applying chemicals, and also some of your costs when you're going to the farm. And that is what I'm giving a figure of 10%, which is coming to about 14,000 in scenario 1 and 15,000 in scenario 2. The total growing cost for case number 1 is 159, 597, and in our case 2 is 170. Then we come to the final figure, which makes us determine or decide whether we are going to grow the crop or not. And here we see that we are making, if we produce 3 tons per acre of fine beans, your profit or the net profit will be 20,000 per acre. if you produce 4 tons, your net profit will be 69,403, and that gives you enough information, or that's what is enough guidelines to enable you decide on whether you want to grow fine beans or not. I've highlighted the areas that I've highlighted. I've stated it as the way it is supposed to be done. If you do it in this manner, I would assure you that 4 tons would be your minimum. Let's say if you increase your production and you get 5 tons in this case, what would be your bottom line? If you get 5 tons as opposed to 4 tons, you'll make a profit of 129,000. And what is that percentage compared to the growing cost? What is that in percentage form? Then we multiply that by 100. So that you're making 199%. I think there's something wrong there. No, I did not take the right one. It is that divided by, no, it is 129 divided by 170. 75% profit. That is, come here. Let's see. Sorry for that. Just want to drive a point home. So here you'll be achieving 76% as your profit or return on investment. Let's go back to 4 tons there, and our return on investment comes to 46%. If you now you can see how you can use this table to jog on your production. So if you do as I have outlined, you'll end up increasing your production. And I have answered the questions as to how you can or you need to increase your production. Here, I've not gone into any cost-cutting measures. I'm focusing on plant, ensuring that you give the plant what it requires. So from this stage, the farmer has made his money and has taken his beans to the exporter. I just need to briefly explain to you, because I think we are coming to Joshua, what time do I still have? Joshua? Okay, Joshua.
Yes, David, you still have 5 minutes. You can proceed until 6:05.
Oh, good.
4:05, sorry.
4:05, good. I need to tell you about the chain, the value chain. The crop moves from the farmer to the exporter, the customer, and the main consumer. And all these people have got various needs in terms of the crop production is concerned. The customer would, for sure, would want to see a plate that has safe food and good quality, and so that he or she can be able to pay for it. The exporter is looking for crops that can meet the specs. And I gave you the spec of fine beans. If we go to the sheet number 1, we have fine beans range from 7 millimeters to 8.5 millimeters. And then we have extra fine, which ranges from 6 millimeters to 6.9. Joshua, I think I've talked quite a lot. I've given the information that I had. Mm-hmm. I may talk and talk. I would like to donate part of the time that has remained to Jane, and also answering any question that may arise.
Okay, thank you very much, David, for that classroom talk. I think most of the listeners have gotten a lot of information from you. We will come to the question and answer time, but that will probably be at towards the end of the session. Like you rightly say, we would like to get some information from Jen as well, because the issue of standards is also very key to the whole growing chain. And therefore, I would give Jen some few minutes, probably about 8 minutes, Jen, just to talk to us about your input on the same subject.
Thank you, Joshua. Wow, standards on beans and peas. I think you can't produce beans now without applying some standards. You need to know, because beans are an export crop, you need to really know what standards your market requires you to grow by. And the beauty of standards, they will tell you like what the system that David has shown us. Standards will actually, applying standards in your practices will actually draw you close to producing in that system, because if you look at the way he has precisely told you that you count the holes, you count the seeds, you count that precision will come about again if you actually apply a repetitive system of how you're practicing your growing. And if you remember last time we said that a standard is something you practice on and on. It is not a one-off thing. So standards are important. It is important to know where your target market is first, and then understand what standards are applied in that market for you to trade there. Even if you're supplying an exporter, you need to understand what that exporter requires of you before you put that seed in the ground. I've seen many farmers who have acres, maybe 2 acres, 3 acres of beans ready, then now they're coming to look for the market. Chances are you shall not get a market for those beans because it is very strict right now, again, because of the restrictions on chemical residues. It will be very difficult for you to get a market. So as David shares his costings, part of that planning process should be, what is your market and what standards are you supposed to grow by? I'll give you another example. If, for example, you are targeting to grow for exporter A, and for one reason, exporter A is unable to take your product, and you approach exporter B. If this exporter then absorbs your product, if the chemicals that exporter A is authorized to use by his customer are not the same as exporter B, regardless of whether they are residues or whether you followed the system of pre-harvest interval, if they test this product and they find chemicals in there that should not have been, regardless of whether the levels are high or not, then there's a problem for that exporter and for you as a farmer. So we are supposed to produce sustainably, and sustainably means it should be a continuous process. It should not be looked at that this business we are getting into is only supposed to last maybe that crop. Remember, Kenya is an exporter of French beans. And once these French beans get out there, it is no longer exporter B's product or exporter A's product. It is produce of Kenya. So if anything happens to produce of Kenya, we can see what is happening with Kakuzi. Then we all have a problem. So it is important to adhere to standards. It is important to follow what the standards require. It is important to follow all the requirements for chemical fertilizer application. Many people think fertilizer is not that risky, but remember, fertilizer will put heavy metals in the soil. So you must get your fertilizer from a reputable company. If then you're using manure, you will think that manure is also a safe product, but you will put manure that is not well decomposed, and therefore you will be introducing unsafe product to the market, because this product might have bacterial colonies, which will then cause that food to be unsafe. Remember, some of us don't wash these French beans while we are packing, and somebody in the market may not wash them as they are testing for quality. So we shall cause a food safety problem just because you used manure that wasn't well decomposed. And number two, the quality of that manure The standard will require you to test the composition of that manure before you apply. You might be introducing again heavy metals or other items that shouldn't be in there. So please adhere to standards. We shall make money by doing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jen. I think from both of you, we have a real wealth of knowledge that SOCAA and ITC will really try as much as possible to disseminate that via this kind of masterclass sessions. Before we go to the question and answer time, I would like to just remind us again, those who are participating in this this series, that we have shared a link, and we request you to just click on that link and find time to answer the questions. And like I said, they are very, very simple questions to answer. It will not take you a lot of time. Let me just go back to David for a few questions that are coming from my side, but we also have some other questions from the participants, which we hope you will be able to answer. Some of them have already been answered online, and I think that is good enough. I would like to take you back to your sheet on the gross margin calculation. And on that page, I see that you have computed some figures, and especially the cost of inputs, where we have fertilizer coming in at about 12% of the total cost. And then we also have the cost of labor, which is about 41%. Now, there has always been this battle with the farmers that the cost of fertilizer and chemicals are contributing the highest in the total cost of the product of production. What's your view on this? Considering that labor cost is actually 41%, and of course, there's very little we can do about that at the moment, unless you will tell me that mechanization has a role or has a place in it. What is your thought, David, on those things I've mentioned?
Yes, thank you, Joshua, for computing. In fact, when you turn figures into percentages, you start understanding them more, and they look logical, and at least some of the things that you've been thinking are the problems, you find that they are not really the problem. Like you've done for the labor. Labor is one of the main, it's a major cost when it comes to production. And fine beans is a laborious crop or labor intensive crop. Especially you will see that most of that, if you go back to the sheet, if you look at the labor cost, the major cost is coming into picking, because you're paying per kilo, and also I've paid those pickers at 30 shillings per kilo, assuming that they're also going to grade. If they're not grading, you pay them at a rate of 40 shillings per you. The target is actually 30. You're giving a person 300 shillings and you're asking him or her to pick 30 kilos, not actually 30 shillings per kilo. That you give him a target of 30 shillings, so it would be like 10 bob per kilo. That is when that person is grading. When he's not grading, then the figure comes to 40 shillings per kilo, which comes to like 300 divided by 40, which would be like 7 shillings or so. In fine beans, yes, labor is a very high figure, like 41%. In other crops, it may come to 30%. Mainly labor is about 31%, and it's an expensive affair. Mechanization is a solution, but not in our case, because you'll see that most of the fine beans are grown by small scale farmers who may not be able to afford machineries for which can be used in like tilling may not be applicable in this case. But picking cannot be mechanized. I think it's going to be long before we see a machine that will be able to harvest beans. Other factors that can also be to minimize labor. One can go into herbicide application. One may go for any approved, like I know Galligan has a labor approval for beans. There's also Gallant, which is used against the grasses. You see that the labor to weed an acre is costing us like 3,900. So, and a liter or a half would, if you use herbicide, you'll end up spending half of that amount. So those are the means, solutions that one would use in order to reduce on cost of labor. Unfortunately, farmers usually reduce on fertilizers instead of trying to see how you can cut cost on labor, but not by failing to weed, instead of using herbicide as opposed to weeding. When you cut down on fertilizer, you actually shortchange yourself. It's like you are robbing yourself or stealing from yourself, because you plant and then you deny yourself an opportunity of maximizing your yields. Thank you, Joshua.
Okay, thank you, David, for that answer. I think there's a few more questions that are coming in on the chat stage, and maybe just to finish up with you, David, on the questions. There is Christine who asks, who says that she is interested in planting. Do I have a guaranteed market? Could you try to address that issue for Christine online? And then we will move on to another next question, which I think Jen should handle. But first of all, to you, David, is the market guaranteed for French beans? Or
depending on where Christine is, this is the best time to plant French beans or fine beans. But the best thing would be to contact any exporting companies that is represented within our area. And then she may end up being contracted. Once you're contracted, you're almost certain that the market will be there. And especially at this particular time, because if beans are planted now, we are coming to the end of October. Harvesting will be done, depending on where Christine is, harvesting will be done around December. The demand for French beans is usually high in the month of December, or December, January, February, March, April, May, June. And up to June is when the demand starts getting depressed. From June to October, those are not very good months to plant, and especially for those who do not have contract. And one thing is that fine beans farming is also infiltrated by a lot of speculators. These are the guys who just plant without outside the contract, and they are like rogue or wild farmers because they are not controlled by anybody. So they end up using each and every chemical that they find in anywhere. And then those are the guys who usually bring issues when it comes to MRLs. And sometimes what they do, they sell their produce, or they give their produce to the farmers who have contracts. And that is how we get to issues of MRLs, which we are trying as much as possible to avoid by following the standards. And if I may say, standards are not means of punishing the farmers or ensuring that the farmer has done a lot of work. It is means that are ensuring that are used to ensure that the farmer carry out agriculture in the way it is supposed to be done, that is good agricultural practices that are geared towards protecting the farmer, the environment, and also the consumer.
Okay, thank you very much, David, for that answer. And finally, for you, I look at whenever I go to the fields or I visit most of the farms, I look at the fields where harvesting is taking place or any other operation is taking place in the farm, And the first thing that you see or strikes you is the number of ladies that are working there in comparison to the men. Is this business more of targeting ladies, or are we only trying to empower them? Is it a forced empowerment, or ladies have something to do with the, they are more sophisticated, and especially where food is concerned, they are more careful, and that is the reason that the numbers of ladies that are working in those fields are more. Are we empowering them, or are we just taking advantage of their prowess in handling foodstuff?
Yes, Joshua, that's a good question. I think the way we live as human beings, I think we operate on very different stereotypes or brainwashed. Like I would actually call it brainwashed, because when it comes to work in the farm, men are brainwashed that the work that involves bending the back, it should not be done by men, and women are good in bending the back. But I don't know whether when God was creating the backbone, whether he gave women a flexible backbone that can be able to bed for long hours, and men are given stiff backbones that cannot bend. I think that is a matter of brainwashing. So according to the beliefs and the attitude that is out there, it is believed that women are good at work that involves bending, while men are good in manuals or works that involve masculine. You'd find men in bed making, in doing other jobs that involves masculinity, than going into picking, especially where the man has to bend. But I think anyone can do the job. But the reason as to why you see many women doing it is because of this stereotypical nature of our thinking or brainwashing. That's how I would put it. It's not actually a work that is designed for women or something like that.
But isn't it good that we have the ladies doing that more? Because of course they very much assist in improving household income by involving them in some of these jobs. So don't you think it's good that we are actually giving them that opportunity to do those kind of jobs?
Actually, for some reasons which I may not be able to explain, you find that in every farm setup, if you walk to any horticultural farm, you'll find like 70% of the workers there are women, and it's only 30% of workers are men. And these days, it's even hard to get men to come to work. Most of them are not. Men for some reasons are becoming lazy. Without being harsh to our men folk, I think we are behaving like a lion, whereby in the animal kingdom, you find that it's the lioness that goes to hunt, while the lion, in most cases, wait for the kill, and then it's the first win.
Joshua, may I interject?
Yes, Jen, please.
You see, some of these jobs, by design maybe, women are more, they look at the picture on the ground. They are more, they have more attention to detail. And some of this requires a lot of attention to detail. You need to see any small speck on that bean. Men have a nature of looking at the bigger picture. Yeah. So they look at how the farm looks. Women look at how that bean looks on that crop. So maybe by design, again, and then there's a time in one of my former jobs, we tried getting men to pick beans. Because of the pressure they apply on that bean, most of that product there was a lot of bruising on it. So women have a certain softness to the picking that men, unless they are trained to do it, they will not have it automatically. And then secondly, about the market for beans. Yes, this is the time to plant, but this year has been, we are being faced with a lot of challenges in that first it was COVID, so then the markets, we are not sure which markets will be open. And then secondly, there is the way the EU changed their testing regime. So the way we've been growing beans actually needs a rethink, because the chemicals we have been applying now we cannot use. We are supposed to use less and less chemicals. And remember, we are along the equator. Everything hits us. The diseases hit us, insects hit us. So we are bound to use chemicals more because it's an easier solution. But those easier solutions are no longer practical. They are no longer allowed. So there has been a lot of blocking of our markets because of those chemicals that we are using. So most companies have had a challenge supplying their markets because of chemicals. So until we come to a stable ground, we will have a bit of an issue. And remember, we are being told that we are getting into a drought. So again, insects will be a challenge, a big one. So yes, we are employing the people who have the expertise to give us solutions, CAFEs, PCPB, to give us a solution that we can work with, because remember, our horticulture industry needs an opening. We need to continue shipping, but we also need the farmers to support the exporters, because you cannot hide anymore. You need to declare what you've been doing to your crop. And you do not think that you will hide a kilo in a ton. It will still get discovered at some point. So those were just my points, Joshua.
Yeah, thank you, Jane, for that clarity. And I think since you are still on stage, maybe you could just tackle the question from Makusa Nzioki. It's not really a question, but he's asking if the recorded link version can be available. Maybe you can just clarify what we are doing behind the scenes, and especially so that most of the participants would have wished to be live on stage but couldn't do it, can still be able to access the recorded versions. Jen.
Yes, thank you, Joshua. The recorded versions, even from our previous webinars, are available on our website. Go to www.SOCAA. You will get all our recordings there. This recording particularly will be ready in about 2 to 3 days. So if you give us that time to polish it, then you can access it at that point. Thanks, okay. Joshua.
Thank you, Jen. I think, ladies and gentlemen, we are just running down the time now for us to get over with today's session. We have looked in details about the process of growing beans for export, mainly because Kenyans consume very little of that crop. I don't know for what reason. David, does it taste bad for us, or why is the consumption of French beans not really, I mean, we don't consider it as a main crop, a main vegetable for us, but we prefer to grow it for export. What is wrong with our eating habits on this crop?
It's based on the habit, the way our eating habit, as you called it. Habit is like a disease. The moment you use it, you keep sticking to it. Sometimes you may not even have an explanation as to why you're doing it. But I'm happy to say that, as I said earlier, fine beans are gaining an acceptance. It's not like before. These days, you can actually go to Barikiti and buy French beans. And in some cases, the price is actually better than selling to exporters. I'm actually surprised to buy, I get surprised to buy a kilo of beans at 8 bob from Marikiti, which surprises me. Yeah. So buying slowly by slowly, I think it's going to gain currency and people will start consuming. But it is very well. It's, I mean, nice. It's something delicious and people should adopt so that we can also grow for ourselves.
Okay. Thank you again, David. as we approach the close of today's session, I would just like to maybe wind up with the two of you, because I think you are the only two who are in attendance today. So David, let me give you just 1 or 2 minutes to just clean your slate and give us your parting shots for today before I make the closing remarks.
Yes, to my dear farmers who are listening to me, farming is not about what the neighbor is doing. Farming is about how you know, or getting to know how to do it, and doing it the way it's supposed to be done, without, if you have to cut costs, get to know where to cut costs and where not to touch. Please ensure that you are consulting the experts. We have we have a rich wealth of experts in SOCAA. You can consult SOCAA and you'll be given the right and appropriate agronomist to advise you. This game of farming, farming is a game, and you have to learn the rules. And the first rule is to ensure that you get to do things the way they are supposed to be done in 1 meter squared. Then you replicate in the whole acre or in the other part of the land that you want to use. So decide on how you're going to do 1 meter squared and then expound on that. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for your nice summary there. Let me finalize with the Jen. Jen, could you just give us your parting shot for today?
Thank you, Joshua. Today was, we were learning about fine beans. And as David puts it, you have to learn the rules of the game. You cannot just do it kibahatisha. If you, in English, it means you're taking a chance. This is a precise business. And for it to be precise, you have to apply a standard way of doing your business. It will save you a lot of waste. It will make you more efficient, and it will give you a chance to produce what you're supposed to produce in the quantities you're supposed to produce, in the quality you're supposed to produce. And then secondly, unless you're going to eat this food yourself, you must follow the regulations of the country and the standards of the market. Otherwise, you will be brought back to zero by just not following 1 or 2 of what you are supposed to do. Thank you.
Okay, Jen, I hope you completed your sentence because you got cut at the last moment, but I'm sure you've told us all that you wanted to say. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we now come to the close of today's recording and today's discussion. You are aware that this is being broadcasted on different channels, YouTube and Facebook, and we have all sorts of participants. There are students coming in, there are students who have logged in, and there are just farmers who are interested to upscale their knowledge a bit on a few things, intricate things that David has talked about. And we hope this has been of value to them and to all of us who attended today. This series will continue for the next couple of weeks. We will continue next week with the same, but more diving onto the other types of peas. Today we dealt more with beans, so next week we will be discussing the other types of vegetables, the peas group. And we hope you will again join us and be able to learn from each other. We will take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, the ITC, and of course in collaboration